Well, hey, and welcome to the Becoming Better podcast. My name's Nate. I'm so glad you're here. Well, on today's episode, Jason and I fill in Josh on the Cocodona and what he missed out, and we're going to see if we can get him to register for 2026. Then we dive into last Sunday's message. If you haven't heard last Sunday's message, I want to encourage you to stop here and give that a listen, as it will help make this conversation make more sense to you. We answer some questions and we dive into what the text says on elders and deacons. And we kind of explain a little bit about our culture and where we see deacons sitting on our team. Now, as a reminder, as we jump into summer, we're going to have a lot of cool events happening. And as we told you Sunday, we have Kids Week coming up, and then we also have a few camps coming up. So if you're interested in registering your child or student for any of that stuff, you can find that at quadcity.church/events. Well, without further ado, we hope you enjoy this conversation. How's it going, guys?
Happy Monday, everybody.
Hey, good to be back.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, there's one thing I want to talk to you guys about.
Okay.
It came up in my feed.
Before we get there, Josh, you were out last week.
I was.
Went down and hung out with some rednecks
I did.
on Broadway. Do you have any?
I
Do you
didn't.
have any Broadway stories?
I didn't even go to like downtown Nashville. We were
Oh.
in like Franklin,
Oh,
Brentwood.
that's the rich people.
Oh,
You're down there with Dave Ramsey.
Bougie. I was bougieing it up.
That
Yeah,
is.
and they had a lot of big houses, and just it did rain though every day.
Yeah.
I didn't see the sunshine for just too long, man. It was
But
terrible.
everything was green though.
Oh, so much grass.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it's raining, and they're cutting grass. I'm like, yeah, you have to. You can't
Because you
not.
can't stop.
Every 3 days you got to
Yeah.
cut that grass, and I was like, I don't miss that. I tell you, I just don't miss. I don't miss none of that. But yeah, no, it was good. It was good. I was in the greater Nashville area, is what we would call it.
I'm disappointed though. I would love to have seen you down on Broadway.
Now, I did Nashville in my 20s. I don't need to do it again.
How much of it do you actually remember?
Quite a bit.
Okay.
Quite a bit. Quite a bit. Yeah. But I'm not a like, I don't know if I'm like go around and just not
Yeah.
not enjoy. They did have like a pre-conference dinner, and they had these two random people up on the stage who were just playing covers all night. And I was like, man, this gotta be a tough life living in it. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, they love it though.
You're trying to make it though. But they're just
Yeah.
sending in like random songs. Can you play this song for me? So you just got to know all these other people's work, you
Yep.
know? But I'm like,
And every bar on Broadway
it's doing that.
is doing that.
They're just
all night
doing
long.
covers all night long. You're hoping
That you get
somebody
picked up.
hears you and you make it. You know, they've got their little, at whatever so-and-so music.
Yep.
You know, I'm like, I don't know if I could get down with that life. But it's fine. They're okay. They had decent voices.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Sweet.
I was in Nashville. Good old Nashville.
Well, it rained here too, so you didn't.
But I
miss
bet you
out.
saw the sun.
No, it was pretty.
Was it cloudy?
Yeah, it felt like kind of Washington-y.
It was pretty
Really?
great
Yeah.
for a couple of days.
Yeah,
Oh yeah. Well, then it must have just been everywhere. I'd
Yep.
have not been excited about that.
which wasn't good because we just had our Cocodona race.
Now
From-
that's something we should talk about.
Yeah,
right there.
from Black
Those people
Canyon
are
City
crazy.
to Flagstaff.
It's like
And they-
250 miles.
Yeah,
257 to be exact, according to our our
insider.
insider James.
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
James actually went. And,
he went up to Mingus.
and
Just cheered him on.
yeah, I guess.
Yeah,
I don't know.
he
He was doing something.
I remember the guy, one of
He
the
loves-
pastors in town. I like saw him the week after, 2 weeks after. Like his whole body started shutting down.
Yep.
Like internal organs.
Yeah.
Were just not working.
The amount of interviews of people. So Sarah and I watched the YouTube stream, and Sarah was like, "Hey, you should go reach out and be like, hey, I can help produce this better." I was like,
Oh, it was rough.
well, they're using, which is really cool. They're using the Starlink, but since it was so cloudy here,
Oh.
it just interrupts the.
So
Signal.
let's give a little bit of context for people
Yeah.
who may not know what we're talking about. The Cocodona
Mhm.
is a run where people start down in Black Canyon City, and they run up to Flagstaff.
Yeah.
So, again, you just think about the elevation gain to get from Black Canyon City.
Like 1,500, 2,000, Black Canyon?
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah,
probably close
and
to that.
then you're coming up to Prescott at 5,000. So they have to run up the backside of Prescott. So they're coming up
Down
and
Senator.
they come down Senator. So we actually see them run by the church. Like they're just coming down the sidewalk on the other side of the church. And so we just watch these people just looking like death
Mhm.
coming down the hill as they've come off of Senator Highway and they're coming down to the church. They go through town, through the square. They go down Rosser and all the way down to 89, and they catch the Peavine Trail,
Yep.
and then they head north on the Peavine Trail. And so again, then you got to go all the way up and
Mingus.
over Mingus Mountain and down through the Verde Valley. And then once you get down to the Dirty Verde, then you got to go back, start that climb all the way back up to Flagstaff. I mean,
Yeah, you go
You're
into
changing
Sedona.
elevations
Yep.
like 3 times.
oh, it's
Yeah.
awful. It would be terrible. And they
I
do
don't
that.
like to drive that.
257 miles.
Yep.
Or 257 miles on foot. They're running
Yep.
this thing.
Yep.
Yeah, it's crazy town. The guy who finished it did it in what?
Uh,
57
yeah.
hours,
Yep.
52 hours,
Yep.
something like
Stop that. You're
He
lying.
he
That's
slept
dumb.
he slept for
Nope.
30 minutes
Nope.
in 3 days.
That's foolish.
Yep.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's like Dean Carnosa's, man, the Ultrathon guy. You
Yeah.
ever heard of him? He just runs those kind of things. He
Yep.
runs like 30 marathons in 30 days. Like that's dumb. That's
And this guy was in, a lot of the people who do it are quote unquote professionals. They're sponsored. So
Yeah.
Hoka or whatever running shoe company sponsors these guys. This guy who won it this year just came out of nowhere. Nobody had ever heard of him, and he didn't have any sponsors, and he won by
Yeah.
like hours in front of anybody else.
he ran 250 miles in 52 hours.
Yes,
So he ran for
it was like a
2 days.
11-minute miles.
Yeah.
11-minute miles for over 257. It's like he averaged something like that. It was unbelievable. It's like the human body isn't made to do that.
We need to get
but
some
he did.
we need to get some Kenyans in this race.
So the
Seriously,
guy that
'cause
got second place.
they train at altitude. Like that's
Yeah.
why they're so good.
Yeah.
They're built for this race.
Yeah.
So the guy that got second was from
Mali or
no.
Uganda?
Yeah, I think so.
Did that, but again, all the like legitimately Kenyans do so well
Yeah.
because they train in altitude.
Yeah.
And this is what this is. Yeah, I mean, did John finish a couple years ago? I can't remember if he said he finished.
Yeah, there's another one. There's a 100-miler.
No,
that
he
goes
did.
around
So yeah, so there's 3. So the full one started like Monday morning, and then there's a Mingus one where you just go to Mingus to Sedona, and then there's a Sedona to Flagstaff. So there's like 4 different races that started last week.
What's the one like? Our church to the square. What's that one?
It's all downhill.
What's that one looking like? Yeah. How are we doing with that?
We might be able to submit that for 2026.
Yeah, can we get in on that one, please? That's the fun run.
Yeah.
Fun run.
That's always they got
That's
the
right.
mile fun run.
Yes.
That's not even a mile,
I
but
think they do that for the Whiskey
they
Row
do.
where
Yeah.
you go from one side of the square. You just
Yep.
run around the square.
sold. Done. Yeah, I don't know. That feels it's just not
It was really interesting because I live off of Rosser, so I can take Rosser home. And coming to work, I saw people all day long,
Yep.
seeing them coming down the hill. Going back home, I see people like they're so spread out, but there was just these zombie walkers and hikers.
So we're in Nashville. I was talking to a guy who we knew. He was like an admin guy from our college that doesn't exist anymore. But anyways, he had just run. Hey, R.I.P. He had just run the Flying Pig. So that's a big one in Cincinnati. It's called the Flying Pig Marathon, and you run through downtown Cincinnati. You do all this stuff. So I've known people who run that marathon and do all those things, but it's only 26 miles.
right, this
It's
is
not-
10 times longer.
Yeah.
That's just dumb.
Uphill. The whole thing's uphill.
Yeah.
You get a little down.
You get a little. Yeah.
yeah.
You
But
got to run to the
Senator
Dirty
Highway.
Verde, and it's probably hot. That's the thing too. The temperature change of that is crazy.
So with it being so rainy, it was the coldest it's ever been. So people were expecting the heat. and like to get it to flag and being a little cooler, but it was just cold the whole way. So like there was like 4 or 5 by day 2 that dropped out because of hypothermia,
Mm.
which is nuts.
Why? This for fun. They're doing this for
They
fun?
they do yeah, nobody's making money off of this. I don't know, maybe the winner gets
I
something?
think the like first 3
What's
get
the
a little
prize?
prize.
What's the prize
They
pool?
don't have it on their
Of
website.
course they don't. Of course
So,
they don't. Like, that's what they do. Like, I have buddies who run the Bourbon Trail race in Kentucky. It's like it's a 10 people race, and it's like 250 miles, and
Yeah, yeah,
you run a portion of
yeah,
it. Like, Jason's running leg 1, it's 8 miles uphill,
yeah,
right? And then this guy's running the downhill, the 2 miles, so sign me up,
yeah,
right? That's what 10 people do,
yeah.
not
Brett, I
1.
think, has done some of that. Brett on our team,
Yeah, yeah, he talked
he
about
has
it.
done some of those kinds of things.
I have friends who do that stuff. I'm always amazed by it.
Anyway,
Oh, goodness.
yeah, so you missed out on that.
I missed out on the run. It's one of my favorite times of year.
Next year.
Next year.
Next year.
Next year I'm
So,
in. So, well, it's good.
but
Sweet.
yeah.
and we had Lindsay on the podcast last week, and
She's a runner.
yes, and so
She's
she's a
she's
weirdo who's walking around with her phone watching these people suffer. She's watching the live cast on the interwebs of people running,
so
and
her
we would make fun of her.
Is somebody just following them on, like
so yeah, so there's volunteers that they have the gimbals like Dan does with
yeah?
cameras and they're at the different spots. So they'll like follow them in and then they'll
Bro,
follow them
we
around.
gotta be a spot next year at the church. We'll just pick them up right here at church, watch them run down. I
Well,
feel like
you gotta run with them.
oh, no. Can we be like a water station for them?
So the water station is the Highland hotel down at the square.
Oh,
So
okay.
they'll stop there and then
We make our church
yeah.
a stop. "Hey, you got a
Yeah.
bathroom? Come on in. We'll give you a little Jesus."
Yeah. So James was actually at Mingus. So there's a checkpoint up there and he was inside and they do food. So he was like,
We can throw orange slices at them
yeah.
as they come by.
That and our kindergartner soccer players. That's
Yep.
both get orange slices. I love it.
So, yeah. So
So,
Sarah and Lindsay actually drove up Thursday
are
to
you
Flagstaff to
serious?
go hang out. Yeah. So they
What
saw a couple
weirdos. They're
people.
so weird.
I Yeah, I don't know if I have any desire to wanna, like I don't know, maybe so if you're a listener and you wanna do it, maybe Quad City could sponsor you. I
Yeah.
don't know what that
Yeah,
looks like.
there you go. We will put our logo
Oh,
Yeah.
on your backpack.
Lindsay's thinking about doing it.
No, she's not.
She's
She
thinking
is
about it.
not. She is
I
not. She's
I don't know, how do you train for that?
she's too old. There's no way she could
That's ooh, boy, that's
Yeah.
we better jump into this weekend sermon with that one. Oh my goodness. That I did not say that, Lindsay.
Oh, she knows. So awesome. Let's dive in. We're in week 29 of our Rise and Fall of
I'm so glad
Ephesus.
Nate remembers the week every week.
Oh, I had to put it on all of our planning center. So when I do the like team huddle
Yeah,
on Sundays, I'm like, oh yeah,
week 29.
week 29. So yeah. So Josh, you were kind of hanging out all over the place.
I was, yeah.
You got to hang out in PV and check out what they were doing down there, and then you came over to Prescott and
Mm.
hung out. So how was your morning? What'd you see? What'd you hear?
But yeah, obviously always great to get to go hang out with the PV campus. You got to take my son over there, so we got to set up, which his little heart was just full. He loves getting to be a part of that and move stuff around. And so, actually, I told somebody with meal pack and then with setting up on Sunday, his tank was like overflowing.
That's
His
awesome.
little I got to serve all weekend was just, he was just so excited. So obviously cool to be in PV, to just get to worship in Prescott Valley. Whole family came to PV. So our whole family was in there and we got to worship together. And then came back on, got to come over here and hang out. So always great to have David in. You know, Jason and I think we talked about before. So both of us grew up and he was kind of the lead pastor. I didn't work with him after that, just but I know his kids and his wife and family. And so it's always good to get to hang out and see that. He was a part of the church that was really influential in my life. So
Yeah.
enjoyed getting to have him here. Feels like I was I would say I was 12 again. That's what it felt like, right? I'm like, "Oh, yeah, I've heard this guy." Yeah. So, um, the familiarity is nice.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, really good.
Yeah, he's obviously been around a long time. Our people have gotten to know him and appreciate him, and we appreciate him. Very pastoral, and
Yeah.
for me, I was really hoping. The reason I called him back in February is, hey, here's a text that's talking about eldership, really trying to lean into somebody who's been in that room and sat in that seat for 40 years, like,
Yeah.
has interacted with good elders and bad
Yeah.
elders, have seen good churches that have done this well and churches that have done it really poorly, and have the ability to bring that experience and share it with our people. So, really grateful he was able to do that with us and for us.
Yeah. And I just really appreciated and I thought it was a cool kind of moment. I wish we could have expounded on this a little more, but having Art read that text
Yeah,
was just so much more impactful for me, and I'm assuming for you too, Jason,
yeah.
just kind of the role he sat in,
Yeah, for
when you
those who don't
first got
know,
here. Yeah, go ahead.
he served or he read our text in the Prescott campus.
Yeah,
And so for those of you in PV, we actually had uh, Gianna May, but in Prescott, Art Olson is the one who read our text for the morning. And Art served as an elder. He more than a decade.
yeah,
Like, I mean, he did it for a really long time, had a couple of stints with us, but he was an elder who played a really huge role in the church back when I first got here. There had been a significant church split and things weren't going well, but Art literally gave of his put his own life and family on hold, pushed pause on his own career, and took the time to make sure that this church got on track. And so, really dedicated. And so, I think you're right. There,
yeah,
it was apropos that Art was the one who stood up and said, "Hey, this is what you do as
yep,
an elder." And so, I think that you're
Yeah.
right. It was really helpful.
yeah, so really enjoyed that, and just even having David, here was just awesome, and just getting to hang out with him and chat with him, uh, which was cool. So, uh, let's dive into we can go 2 ways. Uh, we can dive into our one question that we have, or we can dive into the back half. We read 13 verses, but, David was only able to really focus on the first 3. Jason, do you wanna jump into the last 13, or do you wanna answer this question?
I think if we answer the question, it'll actually lead us to
Yeah.
the text. And
Yeah.
so, yeah,
Yeah.
let's go that
Okay.
direction.
Yeah, and again, I think, one of the example, right, the above reproach is the umbrella. I thought it was a great
Yeah.
analogy
Yeah.
to help see
Yeah.
that. Again, one of the things I thought was really cool also too, before we jump into the question, we don't do it enough here, but he's right. Like, I've been at a bunch of churches. Like, Jason and the elders, they're man, we got a good group.
Yeah.
We're really lucky. And so I appreciated him being able to say that and our church responding in such a way, like, PV responded before David had to ask them to clap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, they appreciate it. Again, I think you may not realize it if you've not been at bad places,
Yeah.
but when it's not been great
Yeah.
and leaders have not been what God calls of you, and you do realize, "Oh, we have some good men, but they're not godly biblical leaders." So I appreciated him doing that, right? I know Jason probably hated it, but it was great
But
because
it does, to your
it
point, coming from somebody who has seen it, and in his job over the last decade,
he's been a part of churches, right?
lots of church like, that's his job. He goes in, he and I were having a conversation over lunch of he sits in seats in these rooms where the pastors and the elders, it's gone sideways, where there's a
Mm,
Ooh,
church split, where the eldership has gone bad, this senior pastor is messed up, or they're trying to hire somebody, and he is the one, as part of his job, as he goes in and he does these consulting with these churches and
true.
has to sit and listen and see the mess that can be made when eldership and leadership in the church goes south. And so
Right.
for him to be able to, having almost a decade of connection with Quad City, to be able to say, yeah, this is good. Like,
yeah.
he knows what good looks like and he knows what bad looks like. And so it is a high honor. You don't take it for granted.
No, yeah, for sure. So I was really It's hard. It would have been hard for, again, Kenny or myself if
Yeah.
we were teaching to
Yeah.
stand up. Again, you feel like you're trying to get your own, but I don't know. But it's always great to be reminded of that, even my own self, to go,
Yeah.
yeah, you know what, man? I've been in places that great people,
Mhm.
good dudes, but man, and the churches has its struggles, and it's,
Yeah.
for those kind of reasons, and so, just a great reminder for us and for our church, what I'm lucky to be a part of and serve at,
Yeah.
so.
So good. Uh, let's jump in. We got this question from Adam. Thank you for sending this in. I love the way he set it up. He said, "I'm not God. I may be wrong. I do love our family at Quad City." So he asks, "Can you please share your thoughts on why Quad City does not have deacon or deaconesses installed, as we see in First Timothy, Titus, etc.? For a church that strives to follow the Bible, we fall short in this area. The eldership does an amazing job leading the congregation from a spiritual standpoint, and a pastoral staff does an amazing job in their roles. I've heard we're all deacons and should be serving, and while that is true, why would Paul call out the office and assign characteristics for those who hold the office? I debated writing this next sentence, so please take it in love, and if need to be, pray on it before responding. Sometimes it comes across that we are so focused on putting on the show each week, and that the duties deacons would perform are not evident. I believe having deaconesses team to lead Quad City would take Quad City to the next level as we strive to serve the members and the community in the areas of communication, visitation, hospitality, outreach, etc. I believe we've grown to a size where the topic needs to be revisited if we're going to continue to grow.
Yeah, that's a great question. Really appreciate it, Adam. And there's nobody who is questioning your motive. We know you love the church and love us, and grateful to have you as a part of our church. Um, this is an interesting. It's an interesting question of how do we think about the role of elder versus deacon versus staff. And in it, you mentioned, hey, the elders do a great job. And then you say the staff do a job in their role. But what do we do with this role in the scriptures that are called deacons? And it's a great question. And I'll tell you where I am. When I think about this question, and as I've thought about it over the last several years, here's where I am. I would say, if you were to pin me down, I would say that our staff are our deacons. And so let me try to frame it out for you this way. You mentioned in your question, you framed it as the staff do a good job in their role. And what I would say is, what is their role? Biblically, what category do you put staff members in? Whether it's a person like Nate or a children's pastor or a worship pastor or Kenny, who is a campus pastor. Like, what role biblically would you assign to them? Because there is no you gave me 3. You said the elder role, the staff role, and then the deacon role. But biblically, there's no category for a staff role. And what I think in the American model of church, what we've done is we've taken the deacon role, and that is our staff people. In fact, the areas of responsibility that you laid out in your question were things like visitation. Like Anthony, here at the Prescott campus or a Corey in our Prescott Valley campus, like they're responsible for that. They take that ownership. You talk about outreach. Kenny in our campus in PV, like that's his job. Like that's what he does. He takes those roles for us. And so if you were to ask me, I would say our staff in the American church, 21st century American church, the deacon role has been usurped by the staff. Like that is their role. And I think we can see it even biblically. When you go back to the first church in the book of Acts and you go to Acts chapter, is it 6, where the deacons are first selected. What were they selected for? So we have 7 guys whose responsibility it was to take care of the widows and the orphans. And that was their job. Like they did that. Now, did they get paid for it? Probably not. Uh, but that was they were set aside, they were ordained, and they were given the responsibility. Who is it that gets ordained into the ministry in the 21st century American church? It is the staff. Like, we put those and we give them a responsibility. And so, um, that's why when you look at this text, so if you have your Bible, go to First Timothy chapter 3, verses 8 through 13. Run this deacon list through the filter of our expectations for our staff. Like, in the same way, deacons are to be worthy of respect, sincere, not indulging in much wine, not pursuing dishonest gain. They are to keep hold of the deep truths of the faith with a clear conscience. They must first be tested. And if there's nothing against them, let them serve as deacons. In the same way, the women, and by the way, your text likely has a footnote on verse 11 that says that these women are likely deacons, or they could be the wives of the deacons. I think it's the first one. I think it's these women are deacons. You mentioned deaconesses. Phoebe fit that qualification in the book of Romans. She's called a deaconess of the church of Crenchania, something starts with a C, big long word. Anyway, she's a deaconess in that church. And so I believe that this is talking about women, that they can serve this role. Again, going back to what I preached 2 weeks ago, we believe every role in the church can be applied. Women should be serving in all of them, except for one, that is the elder role. And you see that even in this text, the deacon role, this staff person role, women can and should serve in these roles in the same way the women are to be worthy of respect, not malicious talkers, but temperate, trustworthy in everything. A deacon must be faithful to his wife, must manage his family and his children. Those who have served well gain an excellent standing and great assurance in their faith in Christ Jesus. So Adam, I would just push back and say we do have a deacon role. We just call them our staff people. So it's just a 21st century marker for us. We have high expectations for our staff. You know what our staff members aren't expected to do? The two things that are distinct for the elders. They aren't necessarily given the call to have the ability to teach. Like, again, I'll pick on my boy Anthony. Anthony serves here at our Prescott campus as an adult ministries person. He helps with all of our first impressions, and he meets with people who are going through difficult times, visit hospital visitations. Uh, we just had a gentleman die this past week, and Anthony got to go be in the hospital with him before he passed last week. Like, that heart and that role, that's what Anthony does. And he has this expectation of the deacon. Like, we hold him to a standard, we put him through the paces to see if he's trustworthy, that he holds to the doctrine. Like, those are not things that we ask of regular volunteers in our church. Like, we don't ask that greeters or cafe workers hold to the faith. Like, that's not the role. Like, that's not part of it. They serve and they do the work given to them in that moment. But there's a higher expectation that we put on our staff. And again, I would just put it, that is the role of the deacon here in this text. You know, I'll just say this as an aside. I think sometimes when we think about the role of elder and deacon and pastor in the church, there's a part of us, and I'll go back to when I first got into ministry in the mid '90s, and I think it was even more so in the '70s and '80s. Just having served with senior pastors over those years who have talked to me about it, like, church governance was set up like the American government. Like, we kind of had this expectation that the pastor was like the executive branch, and in many churches did not serve on or was held to the expectation of an elder, wasn't even considered an elder. The He worked at the behest of the elders. So you had the senior pastor who was like the executive branch. You had the elders that operated like the Senate, and then you had the deacon board, which operated like the House of Representatives. And again, you had the lead pastor who's the executive who operates independently, right? But is held to account by these elders, hired and fired by these elders. And the elder group is always smaller. Then you had this deacon board that was huge, and they could outvote everybody. And again, it was kind of set up in the same kind of way that our American democracy is set up. It's not biblical. And again, I so we utilize these kind of terminologies, and I think they got a little bit usurped uh, in the previous generations. Biblically, the senior pastor should be an elder. And as we're going to see in First Timothy chapter 5, he's the elder worthy of double honor, meaning this guy makes his living primarily doing the preaching and teaching. He should get paid for doing that. And so that's the way many churches have moved to. It's the way our church operates. Um, and so what I hear when what I hear you asking about, Adam, is and I don't know that you are, and this is just being filtered through my own experience of having been in many churches, and I see it primarily in smaller churches, but
Mm.
is that there is this deacon board. And this deacon board is made up of a bunch of volunteers in the church who are responsible for different areas of ministry within the church. As the church has grown, the 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 deacon board idea is not biblical whatsoever. There's no authority that is given to any deacon in the church. Like there's no voting in the deacon board, and there's no voting or authority that was given when deacons are chosen for us in Acts chapter. Is it 6? Did anybody look it up?
6, it's Act
Yeah,
6,
Yeah.
yeah.
it's Acts 6 when the deacons were given. They were they were chosen, they were ordained, and they were set apart to go do a specific ministry. And that's exactly what we do. Amy is been, we lay hands and we dedicated her and said, "You are to go and to lead our children's ministry. Go serve and do that role." Kenny. We lay hands on him and set him apart and say, "Hey, Kenny, your job is to go and to shepherd this campus out in Prescott Valley." Anthony, we lay hands and we set you apart to do this work of visitation and serving hurting families and doing follow up to connect people to the church. Again, it's all very practical ministry. But again, they're not being asked to be the primary teacher for the church, nor are they being asked to have authority. They submit to the authority of the elders. So, all of that is a big roundabout way to say I do believe we have deacons. There are many of them. All of our staff fit into that role. And then we have some that aren't staff members who fit into that role. Ladies like Melody, who serves in our women's ministry and does our brown bag lunch. And she serves and has been given the responsibility to lead that and the volunteers around. Like we have other people in other areas who are doing these roles. So what we don't have is a deacon board. And we don't necessarily have what we a quote unquote an office of a deacon. Um, but what we do have are ministers of the gospel who've been set aside for a specific purpose. Um, and so hopefully that brings some clarity, Adam. That's the way I would explain it. And um, but again, I'm not God. I could be wrong. So
Mm.
if we got this wrong, then we can for sure talk about it. But I think the way that it's set up in the American church, the staff operate as the deacons of the church.
Yeah. And I think, you know, looking at this and using this as a just great reminder, it's one of those I always feel like I'm doing great until I start, using scriptures like this to really be my sounding board of like, okay, am I managing my family well? Am I, you know, am I indulging too much in wine? Am
Yeah.
I pursuing dishonest gains? And
Yep.
it's a great kind of sounding board. And I love that he said that that David mentioned this is for everybody.
Yeah. For
As
sure.
everybody that calls themselves a follower of Christ, this is the best way to look at, okay, how how's my compass going?
Yeah.
You know, and it's one of the things I love about our discipleship group too, because I always feel like, oh, I had a great week. And then we ask the questions.
Yeah.
It's like, you know what? It wasn't that great of a week. I spent way too much money and I did
Listen,
this.
I had that
So,
in our lead team meeting this morning. I had to make up my own confession of some
yep.
heart stuff that God pulled out of me that I'm like, "Oh, ugh,
Yeah.
this gross. I don't
Yeah.
want this." And let me just even add, in a lot of the smaller churches that I've been to serve at, you have these. people who would set aside and you see some leadership
Yeah.
ability in them, you make them a deacon,
Mm.
with the expectation that, hey, there's a pipeline, and these guys, there's some who will eventually become elders.
Yeah.
And I would say that's exactly what we do with our staff. Like, we've already pinpointed a few young guys on our team
Yep.
who are serving right now in a very deacon role. They have some laid out expectations and responsibilities, and we're testing them to find them faithful to produce fruit with the expectation that they're going to move out of that role and ultimately be some of the ones who are the leading churches and giving authority and being the teachers.
Yeah.
Like they're serving in the deacon role now with the expectation they should not be there in the next decade.
Yeah.
Like, and again, I think that's the way I've seen it in many smaller churches. I just think as the scale goes, gets a little bigger, uh, and again, it's very cultural. This is a very American kind of model that we've adopted, um, and it doesn't happen like this all over the world, but this is the way that we've adopted it in America.
And like to your point, deacons are to always submit to the elders.
Mm.
They never are
100%.
allowed to check
That's right.
the like that's not
That's
how it
right.
operates. As, if anything, right? Like the example for me that was shared, while that makes sense in my mind is like deacons are kind of like, a football guy, and I loved it because I was an offensive lineman. But like my job is to block and protect. Like the elders are like the QB, man.
Yep.
Like they're the ones like throwing the play, getting the stuff done, leading the thing. Like our staff enables Jason to teach and preach the word, which is what our church loves.
Yeah.
Like and that's his role. That's what God has given him to do. And so he's the practical demands. And again, that doesn't mean he doesn't pastor because he's also a pastor and we talk about it all the time. But like some of the visits and visitations and the outreach and the community, like it's not that Jason's too good for those things.
Yeah.
But that's not what his role for our church is. That's what our role is. And
Yep.
so Nate has a role that we've given him, right? That's not my role. It's not
Yep.
Jason's role, but he has a role that helps our church. So again, there's a lot of things that they do. And I would just say again, we're not only concerned with Sunday morning, but the reality
Absolutely.
is
Yeah.
in our context, Sunday morning in our context. Now, again, if we were in some uh, East Coast, Upper East Coast states, Sunday church is really different, right? Like people may first go to a house church or
Yeah.
something or a small group. In our context, in Prescott and Prescott Valley, most people still have the context. I will go to church on a Sunday morning. It is a great entry point for people gathering together. It's also what we've seen. It is the body of Christ gathered together like nowhere else on the face of the earth. So, yeah, we put a high value on Sunday because Sunday really matters and we want to do it really well. It's how we try to teach the Bible, it's how we try to
Mhm.
unlock the potential of our group leaders so that they don't have to worry about teaching scripture. They can love and serve and go to hospitals and visit and care for people, right? So, again, we do care about Sunday morning, but we've been saying through this whole series is that's not it.
No.
Mhm.
Like and again, we've tried to then task our staff, who then try to task volunteers and other people within the congregation to go do the ministry to advance the word. Like again, the elders are kind of sharing the word. Jason is sharing and preaching the word. Our job is to advance the word with lockstep vision of what the elders are saying. Hey, this is the direction we're going. Again, to your point, sometimes the House of Representatives acts like the check and balance.
That's right.
That ain't our job.
No.
That's not our job. Our job is to go execute the vision that we've been set in front of us again and advance the word. That's what they say. Look, hey, we need these guys to go do these things because we can't stop preaching and teaching and praying.
Yeah, so let's
I-
go.
that's
I
it.
just want to read that text. So,
Yeah.
what you're referring to is Acts chapter 6, starting in verse 3. Again, there was one set of Jewish widows was not getting the same amount of food from the daily distribution as some of the other widows. And this came before the apostles, and they're like, listen, we can't be dealing with everything. And so in verse 3, it says, brothers and sisters, choose 7 men from among you who are known to be full of the Spirit and wisdom. And again, that is the expectation of all of our staff people, like full of the Spirit, full of wisdom. We want people who can execute on the things that need to be taken care of. And we will turn this responsibility over to them. And we will give our attention to prayer and the ministry of the word, which is primarily you and I would add to it the shepherding of the flock. Those are the primary responsibilities of the elders: the ministry of the word, the prayer, and the shepherding of the flock. Like those three things are the primary responsibilities of the elders. And it says this proposal pleased the whole group, and they chose Stephen, a man full of faith in the Holy Spirit, also Philip and Procorius and Nicornum and Timon. And we get these seven guys, and they presented these to the apostles who prayed, laid their hands on them, and set them out and said, "Go do that ministry." And then we see Stephen. I mean, it becomes his life, and he takes on a huge part of the ministry role in the church. Like he's going and becoming an evangelist, and he's the one that leads the Ethiopian eunuch to Christ, and the Holy Spirit zaps him away, and he ends up in some like. So you
Yeah.
see, once they were set aside, like they went and did the ministry. Like that was their role. And so again, it's not a direct one to one, but as I look at the church today, I think this is the model that the staff in our church have fulfilled this role of the deacons, both men and women who are serving, so that, to your point, Josh, um, the people are taken care of while the ministry of the word is able to continue to flourish. And
Yeah.
and so it was never ever meant to be a board. It biblically you never see it as a board. And I think sometimes we get mixed up in that in thinking that it is that kind of setup, which was never intended.
But yeah, so again, I love that he does say, "We all are servants." I mean, that's the word. Or a
Yes.
minute, we all
Yeah,
are. We all
for sure.
are. We all. Peter talks about we're all part of the
Yep.
priesthood of
Yep.
saints. We all now are given to this. But again, I do love that Acts has the elders, and but then it has this group that they said go do the work.
Yep.
Hmm.
And so again, a great great picture. Again, I've not even heard people really talk about it in this way. It's like, but no, that's what the staff is.
Yep.
And again, that's what we are for Quad City.
Yep.
Well, I've other churches who may just be the bivocational pastor is
Yep.
just that guy
Yep.
who's doing it. He probably has
He's
a
got volunteers
he's
of 5 or 6,
mhm,
a deacon volunteer
who
who's
is the student person.
that's right,
Like
who's
that
taking
so
care of kids or nursery.
when we were at our church plant, I had a guy and a girl who are children's volunteers. I had a worship like again, because we didn't pay people, but
That's
again,
right.
if you would have asked me, like they were our deacons,
That's right.
they're serving our church
That's right.
in elevated roles, and it was like,
Yeah,
these
you have higher expectations.
yeah, like if you do something dumb, I'm
I
gonna
gotta let you
I
go.
gotta fire you
Yeah.
because like, even though I'm not paying you,
Yeah.
I gotta fire you as a volunteer. And I would say as somebody who now my role is primarily made up of leading our staff and also hiring our staff and doing that, like these qualifications, although aren't written out like, hey, but this is exactly what we look for.
Yeah.
Right? We do all of the interview process, we do all of the questions, we get them around our team, we ask reference, we do all of this to go, "Hey, are they someone who actually is of upstanding character and has high value?" Because we don't want them a part of our team because it's a
Yeah.
different level of role, whereas to your point, some volunteer roles within our church, man, they non-believers, jump in, let's serve, let's do the thing together.
Yep.
Yeah, let's go. Again, and then some of our deacons, our staff, do teach. But again, it's not a have to, but they do. And they've been given that authority by our elders,
Yep.
right? They've been granted authority to teach. But at the end of the day, all of the authority rests with, and again, we submit. I mean, it goes back to the Ephesians. We're all called to submit,
Yep.
right? And it's really clear we're all called to submit to one level within our family of the church, and that's our elders. And so we all do that. Like
Yep.
that's every one of our roles. We submit to the leadership and vision of the direction
Yeah.
of our elders.
And many of them, you were talking about how the emphasis we put on the Sunday morning. Most of our team aren't their primary responsibility, their main, connection point in ministry doesn't take place on a Sunday morning.
Yeah.
Like Brad or Brett, even guys like Freddie, he's not Sunday morning responsibility.
Right.
He's set aside to go do our student stuff. Amy, um, again, you can just go down the list of Noah. These guys are all deacons, and their primary service is not a Sunday morning role. It's
Right.
just pastoring people and shepherding people, make sure that people are taken care of.
But
Anthony,
but I hear him. We hear you, Adam, in the church for a while has been all about Sunday.
Hmm.
And we are saying, hey, Sunday matters. It's
does.
important. But we've been saying If that's all you're doing, that's not enough.
Nope.
Like, we've been saying that, been our attention as a church, really feeling that through this series in the rise and fall of the Church of Ephesus is if it's just an hour, that's why the prayer thing matters.
Yep.
Like, again, like, we've been saying all of these things over and over because it can't just be, you know, again, the word should come to us from and then that encourages us or challenges us, calls us to repentance and conviction to go then do the thing God calls us to go and do.
Yeah.
And then we execute that. And so, yeah, we we love Sunday. We think it's super important, but again, we've been saying that's not it. We actually think there's a lot more that happens and should happen within the church
Yeah.
congregation. So,
Yeah. So, the typical question we have is what else would you add? And I think, David really did a great job of helping us think through the older piece. And we didn't get to this deacon question or the women question because, again, he points out, and the women. Like, and again, I
mhm.
think what we would say is that deacon role is available to women. They ought to be serving in all of these areas, doing all of this ministry. And how do we help and equip and empower both men and women to serve in the ministry that God's called us to in our church? Again, we would just say that one role is like the father in the home is the elder in the church. That those are synonymous, kind of parallel pictures of the weight and the responsibility is ultimately in those two roles are that God says, I want the man to bear that. Everything else, like we need good men and women to be serving in all of these other roles. And it is available. That deacon role should be men and women serving in all sorts of different uh, 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 in all different opportunities based on their ability and gifting that God has placed them in. And so that's the one piece. Again, David just didn't have time. We gave him a big chunk of text.
Yeah,
Yeah.
whoever broke those texts up was like a crazy person.
Easy.
Who would do that? No. Yeah, no, it's just I am grateful that we again, I just want to circle back, man. We do try to live out the values and see this and have a qualification. And um, I think it matters. I think it matters that we get it right. I think, you know, trying to lead a church, and I did appreciate that his end, just talking about not literally standing on the word, but standing on the word.
Yeah.
And it is just one more
Yep.
step and one more. He's right. That's what I've seen. I've seen churches and leaders take the step, and they take the next step, and the next step, and the next step, and before too long, it's no longer that they're actually living out. Not that they don't believe the Bible is true.
Yeah.
They've just tried to walk away from some of the expectations of it. And
Yeah.
so, man, that is the primary thing, that they hold the doctrine and keep the church headed in the right direction. I mean, that's what we've been saying. Right? All of Paul's saying to Timothy has been about that. Timothy, I'm leaving you this charge, son, because there are people who are trying to change this, and you can't change it. You gotta stand on the word of God. And it's gonna be really uncomfortable and really hard. And again, I'm sure David would be able to point to those churches that unfortunately are sometimes a mess and a disaster.
Mhm.
Look where they look where they gave.
Yep.
Here and here and here. And so it's a big responsibility and a big work. So one of his challenges was pray for your leaders.
Mm.
Like I've was been convicted over that last couple, years is I need to make that a priority more of the things that I'm praying through in my list of praying for our elders and praying for our for Jason, as one of the elders on our team. And because the responsibility, like, they will also be called into account for what they are doing.
Yep.
That is their responsibility, right?
Yeah.
And so, as much as I will be too as well, but they have a different level that God's gonna at the end go, "Hey, man, what'd you do with what I gave you?
Yep.
The flock I entrusted you with,
Yep.
elders of our church."
Yep.
So I wanna go, man, Dave was right. We should have all left going, I do need to pray for them.
So let's put all of this back into context. All of chapter 2 of First Timothy. Again, you got different subheadings, you got paragraph breaks, and you got ditch those for a moment. Let's just go back to the beginning of chapter 2. Paul wrote this. It was all in one letter. He did not put those chapter breaks in there, did not
Right.
put those verse breaks in there. Let's go back and read chapter 2, verse 1. This exactly what you're describing, Josh. I urge then, first of all, that petitions, prayers, intercessions, and thanksgiving be made for all people. And then who does he get specific about? For kings and what's the next phrase?
All
All
those in
those in
authority.
All who are in authority. And then he goes into chapter 3 and he's talking about those who are in authority. And so we shouldn't neglect the idea that when he's saying pray, he's not just talking about the authorities in the secular realm or authorities in the governmental realm. This is all authority, those and all authority, which include those that we submit to in our church, that these elders who have been given the responsibility that we should be praying for them in the same way that we pray for everybody else. And maybe even more so
Yeah,
because the target is bigger.
absolutely. I had a sweet old lady in my first church. She used to tell me that I was number 3 on her prayer list. First was the lead guy and the elders, and then it was like her husband and family, and then Josh was number 3. But you know what? I was okay with number 3.
Yeah.
I was fine with that. I
Yep.
was okay to be I didn't hate that.
Take it.
I'll take it. But again, she was like, "Oh, baby, I gotta pray for." His name was Jason too. Which is really,
Yeah.
but she was like, "He's got so much weight and pressure on him." I'm
Yeah.
like, no, I'm with you. Go ahead and pray for yeah. So I was like, 3, I'll take it. Thank
Take
you.
it.
So again, that conviction has stayed with me forever. Is like that. That's one of the roles that our church can be doing for our leaders. How do we
Yeah.
support our leaders? That's it. We try to keep the unity. If we're frustrated with decisions
Yep.
or wonder, we go to them and ask them for clarity instead of
Filling
causing
in the gaps with our
yeah,
own.
with our own thing or trying to cause dissension, right? Like that's not what a healthy church needs, right?
Yeah.
And so again, these are the things that we can do as we see this. And that's also too when we present people to the church, when we do elders, this is the list we have in mind. When we go, "Hey, is there anything we don't know?" We're talking about this stuff.
Yeah.
Not like, "Oh, hey, did you know that?" No, we're talking about does he have a good reputation with outsiders?
He leaves his trash cans out 2 days after it gets picked up.
Yeah, yeah. That's
His
not
children hate him.
that's a big one though.
Right.
That's a
For
huge,
sure.
Yeah.
a
You-
huge
we should
one.
know that.
We
That
need
would
to
be
know.
really helpful.
We need to know. So that's when we do that every year. When we place that before our church does, we're asking you all to look at that and go, yeah, those are and to know also that our elders have spent an entire year making sure that those things are true
Yeah.
to the best of their ability and the best of their knowledge, right? Because again, they do care highly. And the same with our staff. If a new staff person shows up, it's not that we didn't just hire them, off whatever monster.com
Yeah.
and just say, "Oh yeah, you're hired." Like it's a lot of time and effort and
process.
prayer, and so know that we're trying to make sure that the right people are in the right role
Yep.
to help our church move forward. So
So good. Awesome. Well, I think that's where we're gonna land. We hope you guys have a good week.